Thank you, Chair. Last night, the Australian Electoral Commission gave evidence to the Finance and Public Administration Committee that a political party may be required to repay gifts where that company becomes insolvent. Are you aware of Section 306B of the Australian Electoral Act? Anybody at ASIC?
Yes, John?
Would you like to?
No. Sorry, sir.
No.
You're not aware of the Act?
Aware of the Act, yes, not of this particular provision or its operation with respect to ASIC's responsibilities.
Okay, so you're not aware of it ever being used previously?
We're happy to take it on notice and come back to you. That's fine.
Is it an unusual question, or is it
No, I'm personally not aware of it, neither, but we'll take it on notice, Senator, and come back to you and answer if you like.
Sorry,
Warren, do you have a?
To my knowledge, and it goes back 12 years, Senator, the answer is no. Sections of the Australian Electoral Commission Act are not ones that ASIC would have need to use. That would obviously be for the Electoral Commission.
Okay. All right. Well,
is there a different reason why you think we would, Senator?
Well, I'll just go through a series of questions, and then perhaps we'll get to that. So this week, Home Australia was placed in liquidation.
Yep.
Is ASIC aware that Home Australia is wholly owned by B&B Day Proprietary Limited?
Yes, we are, Senator.
Thank you. Has the Commission received any complaints regarding Home Australia Proprietary Limited?
My understanding is that we may have, Senator, but I
can
take that on notice.
Can you provide the detail of that?
Not off the top of my hand. I can take that on notice and get back to you if you like. Mind you, the nature of any complaints that ASIC receives are confidential.
Well, I mean, if someone, you can give us the number of complaints.
Yeah. And if there is, Senator, I believe it would be in the very small handful.
Okay. Has ASIC received any complaints regarding any of Home Australia's subsidiaries, which would include Homestead Homes Proprietary Limited, Smart Road Property Rentals Proprietary Limited, New Start Homes SE Queensland Proprietary Limited, Collier Homes Proprietary Limited, Ashford Homes Proprietary Limited, and Huxley Homes Proprietary Limited?
I'd take that on notice in the same vein as the previous question, Senator.
So are you currently, how does it work? Do you investigate the collapse of Home Australia?
Generally, if I talk in generalities about when companies go into liquidation, Senator, if that assists, and as reported in the media, those companies entering liquidation is a very new event. It's in the last number of days. What is normally the practice, and quite properly the right practice, is that the liquidator refreshes themselves and advises themselves and briefs themselves with the benefit of the books and records and assistance from the directors as to what the nature of the company's accounts and the company's activities have been. That process can sometimes take a number of weeks. They then ordinarily, at a certain time frame, call a meeting of creditors and call for proofs of debt, i.e. people who are creditors of those companies. At that point then, they will issue a report to creditors and they will contact ASIC if they believe that any misconduct has occurred under the Corporations Act. Yes. They're in fact obliged to, under the legislation, to do so. Should we receive such a report? We don't always receive reports because, as you appreciate, not always does a liquidator believe misconduct's occurred. But should we receive such a report, and this was similar to the question from Senator Xenophon earlier this morning, we would look at that and consider what needs to be done.
Okay. So at this stage, ASIC would not be investigating Home Australia or its subsidiaries?
Certainly not, Senator.
Too early in the piece?
Very much so, Senator.
And likewise, you wouldn't be investigating B&B Day Proprietary Limited?
Yeah, that's correct, Senator.
Okay. So you would not be aware of any payments made by B&B Day to the Family First Party?
I'm aware of reports along those lines, Senator, but as I said, we would wait to see what any liquidator would raise with us in relation to those payments.
Okay. So given the receipt of gifts by Family First from B&B Day Proprietary Limited, which wholly owns Home Australia Proprietary Limited, do you have a view on the application of Section 306B of the Electoral Act to recover?
No, I don't, Senator.
In the normal course of events, would a recovery within 12 months insolvency be normal practice?
It would be, I would expect, Senator, it will be a matter for the liquidator to decide that. Just like, and again, we discussed this morning, just like unfair preferences, where other payments have been made in preference to one creditor over another, and then obviously any claims of the nature that you're raising, a liquidator would look at those and see whether or not there are the ability to claw those back for the benefit of the creditors in terms of the winding up.
So you're saying it's the liquidator's responsibility to look at whether they should be repaid to go to the proper creditors of the organisation?
Correct. The
Yes,
liquidator will look at whether there's been any...
Sorry, I can't quite hear.
Sorry, the liquidator would look at whether there's been any, it's called preference payments, and they, as Mr Day has said, the liquidator has a statutory obligation to report to us if they think there's been any breaches of the Corporations Act.
And Senator, I've just had a copy of 306B shown to me, and it would appear on that ASIC has no standing, but in fact the liquidator has an explicit standing in relation to those matters of clawing back any such funds in the manner that you say.
So the liquidator's responsibility?
Correct.
But is he also bound to report to you?
If he the liquidators are bound to report to us if the liquidator believes or suspects there may have been misconduct under the Corporations Act. The liquidator is not required to report to us in relation to anything occurring under the Electoral Act. However, it's possible that they, and this does happen from time to time, that liquidators will say, not only do we think there's been a breach of the Corporations Act, but we believe there's been a further breach of this associated legislation. That sometimes happens as well. So it's not to say that they won't tell us that they believe a breach has occurred and that they are taking actions under that section. But the primary requirement under the Corporations Act is that they tell us about any misconduct they believe may have occurred under the Corporations Act.
Okay, so for a creditor out there who's hoping for a better payment than he's currently looking at,
Yes.
does ASIC have a role here or not?
Well, ultimately, yes, there is a role, but the primary and early role is for the liquidator. The liquidator's job is to say what are all the assets that are available or recoverable for the sake of creditors, and then to go and make the inquiries and take the actions that they need to take so that all those monies can be made available for creditors in that space. If it is that then there are frustrations in those recoveries or difficulties in accessing books and records, ASIC often is asked by liquidators to give them assistance to go and secure those books and records, and we will do that. If, as part of the types of misconduct they believe may have occurred, they report to us, it may be that we may need to take other actions. Certainly, if people were trying to distance assets from the liquidator by, say, putting them offshore or those types of things, and I'm speaking hypothetical clearly here at this point, there may be roles for ASIC to play in that space. But again, those things are premature and we ordinarily wait for the liquidator to come to us and tell us what do they need assistance with.
Okay, well, I'm not suggesting anything untoward's happened here. I'm just saying that there appears to be a provision that gifts over $10,000 within a 12-month period, where a company goes insolvent, could be recoverable for creditors. That's basically correct?
I understand what you're saying, Senator.
Okay, so whoever goes and does what, the liquidator's the first point of call. You can be called in to assist.
Yes.
But a legitimate claim could be hypothesised to ask for those monies back.
I'm not an expert in the section, Senator. As I say, I've just had this section shown to me, but it would appear to be the case that the liquidator can seek to claw back under that section as they need to.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Williams.